Greetings and welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you could be here today. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit those like and subscribe buttons and maybe drop us a comment down below. It all helps feed the hungry growing algorithm. And while you're doing that, go ahead and check us out over on Patreon. The link is at the top of my YouTube page and in the video description down below. Cool stuff going on over there. Now, a quick shout out to my Tier 4 patrons, Russ of the Frozen North, Neo5AC, and Nick. Thank you very much. Now, on with the story. Deathworld Origins by Captain Meta 4. Chapter 3. Approximately 65 million years before Vancouver. Royal Communications Array, Outer Citadel, Strak'kel, Vezzik. Vezzik was on duty at the Vezzik communication station when the single most devastating message was delivered. He had been rewarded handsomely for delivering the notice of the Igreans' surrender, so much so that he had gone out to the market and bought a new, brightly colored tunic as well as a cushioned chair for work. The Grand War Master had sent one of his personal servants to the Royal Communications Array with a purse full of gold, and Vezzik had delightfully accepted. Despite his newfound luxury, Vezzik was still on full alert at the Ray. His new cushioned seat was far more comfortable than the old bare stool had been, but he had a duty to perform. The printer whirred to life and began spitting out page after page. Vezzik originally thought there must have been some mistake. Most communications were 1 or 2 pages, perhaps 3. Rarely a 4-page transmission came through. This one was almost 10 pages long, and seemed to be some type of health report. Vezzik looked at the cover sheet. Another message for Grand War Master Vezzik. For some reason, the Grand War Master was also listed as the sender. That was odd. Vezzik fit the sheaf of paper into a binding, closed and locked the communications array, and made his way to the outer sanctum. He found Vezzik's quarters and knocked on the door.
Transmission from the Royal Communications Array for Grand War Master Vezzik. One moment.
Vezzik opened the door.
You're the same courier that delivered the last message. Yes, sir, I am. We'll get on with it. What do you have for me today?
Vezzik handed over the bound packet.
Large transmission for you, sir. Accepted. Now get back to your station.
Vezzik's face fell. Vezzik noticed.
Just because you lucked out and delivered one good message does not mean you are special. I gave you the gold because I was in a good mood. Now get out of here.
Vezzik was right. Of course he was right. He was the Grand War Master, and Vezzik was a lowly communications operator. Duty to the Empire always came first.
Yes, sir.
So Vezzik made his way back to the Outer Citadel and back to the array station, and resumed his post. One uneventful hour later, 4 Sanctum guards armed with Geron rifles kicked in his door.
Operator Vezzik?
Vezzik nodded.
You have been summoned by the Grand War Master Vezzik. In the name of the Emperor, may his wisdom shine forever, you are ordered to come with us.
Asteroid Field, Igrean territory. Crowell, Chief Engineer of the House of Stars. Crowell was initially confused by the message that had arrived in his implant. Reactivate Cataclysm. There were no other details. Crowell had to spend several minutes trawling through the data archives in order to find the file, and eventually pulled up the old project data. There were plans for massive tugboats with unfathomable amounts of thrust and not much else. There were plans for classified orbital shipyards needed to build said tugboats. There were maps identifying suitable meteors that had been tagged with tracking beacons. There was a report on the Vezzik orbital defensive networks and a report on the difficulties of cloaking such a large object. And finally, a project closure order. Cataclysm, it seemed, had been a military project from the very beginning of the war. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Tow a meteor into a collision course with a planet, then sit back and wait for the fireworks. However, the project had been abandoned when the House of Spies reported that the Vezzik orbital defenses would have detected and vaporized any such meteor long before it was a threat. And to date, nobody had been able to penetrate the Vezzik defensive network. It had its own private communications with private FTL data sync boxes. It was isolated from all publicly accessible equipment and even isolated from the rest of the Strak'kel communications network. So there was only one reason Cataclysm would be resumed now. Barely able to contain his excitement, Crowell called in his engineers to begin planning out the project. Soon, the war would be over. Office of the Grand War Master Vezzik, Outer Sanctum, Strak'kel, Drazik. Drazik was unceremoniously pushed back into Vezzik's office, where he had only been an hour before. Vezzik's face was dark with rage, his tail whipped angrily from side to side.
"How much of this report did you see?" he demanded.
"Just the cover page, sir, and something about an Igrean disease."
"Good. Let me be very clear. You saw nothing. You heard nothing. This transmission does not exist. You never delivered it, and I never received it. We never even had this conversation. Do you understand?"
Drazik was too confused to do anything but nod.
"Now, in exchange for your silence, I want you to apply to the Guardsman Academy. You look fairly strong for your age, and it would be a waste of muscle to have you sitting in a communications array."
Drazik went from confused to shock. Admission to the Guardsman's Academy was highly competitive, as it was nearly the only way to rise from the lower castes. This must have registered in his face, because the next thing Vezzik said was,
"I will see to it that you get in."
1 hour later, Vezzik had sent off Drazik and promptly petitioned for an emergency meeting of the High Council. They were assembled in the council chamber where just a few nights earlier Vezzik had discussed the Igrean surrender with War Counselor Za.
"I am about to share something of grave importance," he announced. "But first, your duty to the Emperor requires that we swear the silent vow. On my life, the words spoken in this place shall never be repeated from now until the end of time."
In turn, each member of the council recited the oath, in pantomime sewing their lips closed. After they had finished, they returned to Vezzik.
"Now then, as you all know, the Igrean House of Cannons offered surrender negotiations several days ago. However, a few hours ago, we received this transmission via the communications array."
Vezzik plopped the file down on the table.
"The surrender was a ruse."
"Then why surrender at all?"
asked Za. Vezzik spat it out with disgust.
"The Igrean wretch used the negotiation meeting to create a false copy of my own consciousness and extract some type of information from it. We have to assume that everything I know is compromised."
The council was horrified. The Igrean pursuit of digitizing their own essence was morally abhorrent in its own right, but to do so unwillingly to another species, that was a crime against nature itself. Vezzik continued.
"This transmission was sent to me by the thing. Apparently it was able to discover some critical information and send it through."
None of the council seemed interested in what the digital abomination reported. Vezzik was undeterred.
"The Igrean race suffers from a universal genetic disorder that impairs their ability to think rationally. They call it madness. The disease is treated, but not cured, by a natural occurring substance found in their native plants and animals. In particular, their tnock plant. They also purify this substance into a pill they call a supplement."
Wurg perked up, now that something plant-related had been mentioned.
"So they are wholly dependent on tnock for sanity?"
"Yes, that and also the tip-tip fruit. The Igreans won't starve. As members of the Galactic Compact, they'll be eligible for emergency disaster relief, but they certainly won't be able to maintain a functioning civilization."
Now the High Council was paying attention.
"How would we actually do that?"
asked Za.
"We're just barely able to contain the Igrean threat as it is. We rad bomb and nerve jam colony after endless colony, and they just pop up elsewhere. The orbital defense networks deflect an unending stream of missiles, and we can barely keep up with the onslaught. It takes all our resources just to avoid being overrun. How are we supposed to dedicate firepower towards an agricultural mission?
Word, you forgot that Strak'kel is a Grade 0 Deathworld.
Vezzik smiled wickedly.
The Igrean can't deal with anything tougher than Grade 6. A few vials of stagnant pond water should do the trick.
The High House, capital city Igreas. Tanais, chief engineer of the House of Codes. Tanais, Baton, and Krull were gathered in Valaur's office. It was a lavish place with opulent red curtains, gold leaf along the walls and ceiling, and a desk of solid tech wood with an inlaid screen. Tanais didn't want to think about how much that desk cost. All of them had been given access to Cataclysm. Krull began.
During our first attempt at Cataclysm, the House of Stars designed and built several shipyards and tugboats. Most of the shipyards still exist in a repurposed state, but the tugboats have all been scrapped for parts.
"What's the estimated time on building new tugboats?" asked Valaur.
We have existing supply for almost all of the materials, so it's just a matter of updating the designs to work with modern control software. We may even be able to incorporate SuperSim, if Tanais can add a control interface. Of course we can, Tanais interjected. Then we estimate a prototype tugboat in 2 months, and a full fleet in a bit more than one cycle. Less if we can bring in the House of Forges to help with the sheer amount of labor needed.
Does the House of Stars have the budget to pay the House of Forges?
We do.
Then of course.
Then I think we would be able to have a full fleet in 9/10 of a cycle.
Wonderful. Valaur turned to Baton. The Vostraki orbital defenses. What's the status on dealing with those?
We still have the infiltrator, she replied, but we can't activate it until we need it.
Guardsman's Academy. Strak'kel. Drassic. True to his word, Vezzik had pulled some influence somewhere, and Drassic had cruised easily through the admissions process. He wondered what had been so important in that file to make it worth sending him to the Guardsman's Academy. But ultimately that didn't matter. His duty was to the Empire, and right now he was needed in the armed forces. And so Drassic checked into his first day of training, eager to serve and only marginally apprehensive about what that might entail. Drassic quickly realized that it didn't actually entail a lot. He met his bunkmate, a hugely muscular specimen by the name of Mejir. Drassic realized he must have been gawking because Mejir asked,
"You never seen a rock hauler before?" "No,
Drassic was embarrassed.
"It's all right. I need it out of the quarries. Tore a tendon. Doc healed it up good, but I cannot haul anytime soon."
"I'm sorry for that."
"No need. I was useless there. We haul granite all day for ships or guns or some Igrean war. Then Ming gets... You know who Ming is, right?"
"High Counselor of Industry."
"Yep. We haul load of ore. Next week, Ming has a huge metal statue outside office."
"Ah."
"So I thinks. I get in guard. I put muscles to use big hitting Igreans until no more left to hit. I serve Empire better now."
Drassic nodded. Despite his higher birth and upbringing, he suddenly felt very inadequate.
"Anyways, enough about me. Why you here?"
"I wanted to do something useful too,"
Drassic lied.
"The opportunity came up for me to apply, so I did."
"You small. How you get in?"
I got in on the written test.
That wasn't a lie. Vezzik had selected the highly unpopular written test and done very well.
We see how you do in training.
The training consisted mostly of combat scenarios, followed by tactics lectures, with rotating promotions based on performance. Vezzik thought he did reasonably well in the scenarios, despite being smaller than the typical soldier. Vezzik was much smarter. Where Majir could charge blindly into an ambush, Vezzik would see it coming and root around it. On the flip side, Majir was strong, so much so that he could brawl his way out of just about any problem. As the weeks passed, Vezzik's muscles grew stronger. Soon, he hoped, he would make the cut. Igrean military shipyard, Eternal Thought. Tineus. 3, 2, 1. Scan complete. Tineus and Krail watched through the window as the tech removed the leads from the pilot's head. All done. Give the computers a few minutes to analyze and compile, and you'll be good to go. The tech packed up his equipment and left. Tineus entered the room. Welcome to Eternal Thought. I don't believe we've met.
Radir, House of Cannons, spaceflight pilot.
Tineus, House of Codes, Chief Engineer.
And I'm Krail, House of Stars, Chief Engineer.
So, what exactly is this digital version of me going to do? Something for the war, obviously, but nobody has told me anything. Tineus paused for a moment to cybernetically grant Radir clearance to Cataclysm. Walk and talk? Radir grunted in agreement, and the three of them set off through the station.
The concept itself is pretty simple, Krail explained. Throw rock at planet, planet goes boom. In practice, it's more complicated, not least because of the Strak'kel orbital defense networks. The tugboats have to coordinate in order to release the rock on the correct trajectory, because once it's gone, we can't correct it. So we have to administer a huge amount of force, precisely measured and timed.
And that's where I come in, to have one synchronized consciousness across the systems.
Exactly. Tineus here recently completed the development of true simulated intelligence. Your brain scan will be used to create a mind state that will be simulated within the ships. It will, of course, have access to all of the ship's hardware and controls.
So I literally get to win the war, Radir asked.
Tineus replied,
If the tests are successful, then yes. And if you're as good as Baton says you are, then it should be no problem. And here we are. The trio arrived at the control room for Eternal Thought's launch bay. The bay itself held the engine prototype, an array of kinetic thrusters and reactors. Around the control room, engineers were making last-minute preparations for the prototype test. Kinetics online. Reactors online. Controls online. SuperSim online. Remote control environment loaded. Importing mind state to SuperSim. Releasing construction pylons. Commencing test flight. The tugboat engine slowly drifted out of the launch bay and spun a lazy quarter turn. It fired up its thrusters and then exploded in a silent, violent blaze. The engineers were dumbfounded. There had been no warning and no alarms. Everyone stared at the fireball outside the launch bay, barely reacting even when Eternal Thought shuddered under the shockwave. A few moments later, the sound of the several incoming messages broke the tension. From Radir to Radir, Baton, Tineus, Krail. Subject: Test flight. I finished compiling just in time to see the engines explode outside my bay on camera. I wasn't actually in the tugboat. Sabotage? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Casual Deathworlder, your host, and this has been Deathworld Origins, Chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, go ahead and smash those like and subscribe buttons, and maybe drop us a comment down below and help feed our hungry algorithm. All the comments help. Okay, as always, huge shout out to my buddy Gregor. Thank you very much, buddy. I could never do this without you. Now, one more huge shout out to you. All of you. You know who you are. Y'all are the reason I do this. Thank you very much. Now then, question, who's got the question? Fruit. What is your favorite fruit? And what kind of fruit would you not put in a fruit salad? Leave your answers in the comments down below. In the meantime, be safe, be well. I love you all. Oh, Gregor! Yeah, I think we're done here. Okay, now, on to Deathworlders. Bye-bye! Okay, it is time once again to do the thing, because, well, things gotta be done. People gotta do things, you know? Alright, so, moving on with Deathworld Origins. God fucking damn it. Really?